Her alarm went off at 5 a.m., but Rhea didn't need it. She was already awake, eyes wide open in the darkness, heart steady like a drum beat in a battlefield. It wasn't always like this. Just a year ago, she was hitting snooze 5 times before, dragging herself out of bed, already behind, already defeated. Now, something had changed. Not her job, not her circumstances. What changed was her command. Most people think the hardest part of the day is that big meeting, the presentation, the conflict, the hustle. They're wrong. The hardest part of the day happens in the first 10 seconds after you open your eyes. That's when your mind is soft, your body is heavy, and the weakest voice you have whispers, "Just 5 more minutes." And most people, they obey. You don't lose your power at 3 p.m. when your boss yells. You lose it at 6:03 a.m. when you negotiate with your alarm, and you think it doesn't matter? You think you'll make up for it later, but later never comes. What comes instead is a slow erosion of self-trust, a quiet, creeping doubt. You start to believe the lie that you're not capable, not disciplined, not made for more. But the truth is simpler and far more powerful. You've been training yourself to lose. What if I told you that discipline isn't something you're born with? It's something you choose while the world sleeps. What if I told you that the strongest people you know aren't fueled by motivation, but by a quiet, relentless decision made every single morning? Not once, not for a week, but every day. Without applause, without an audience, without inspiration, only intention. This is the ritual of rising, and it's sacred in Seattle, where the rain hits windows like a soft drum and the sky rarely breaks open. Rhea built her sanctuary. She didn't buy it. She didn't find it. She created it with repetition, with courage, with one single decision made before sunrise. I do not negotiate with my weakness. Every night, she writes one sentence on her mirror in red marker. I rise because it's who I am. And when morning comes, and the voice of comfort says, "Stay," she doesn't argue. She doesn't explain. She stands up, immediately. It's not about the time, it's about the choice. Standing up sends a message to the body. We move. We lead. We're not here to hide. There's something primitive about those first 10 minutes of being awake. It's raw, vulnerable, unfiltered. That's when most people are still dreaming, still running from yesterday. But the 1%, they're preparing to win. Discipline isn't glamorous. It doesn't make headlines, but it builds identity, and identity decides your destiny. When Rhea gets up before the sun, she's not just avoiding being late. She's casting a vote for the woman she's becoming. Strong, centered, untouchable. You don't need to be extraordinary to do this. You need to be willing. Willing to step into discomfort before the world demands it from you. Willing to say, I lead my day. I'm not a follower of feelings. I'm a servant to what I said I'd do. There's a quote from Cassius Leon, one of the lesser known but most disciplined Stoics, who wrote, "A morning delayed is a throne abdicated. Rise, or rule nothing." That's not poetry. That's a battle cry. And if you can win those first minutes of your day, you've already won more than most people ever will. So let me ask you this. When your alarm rings tomorrow, who will rise first? The version of you that wants easy, or the version that remembers why you started this in the first place? If this message hit something deep in you, if it shook your chest just a little, if it reminded you of the fire you've been ignoring, then do one thing for me. Subscribe to this channel, not just to support us, but to support the version of you that refuses to sleep on their potential any longer. More videos are coming. We'll go deeper. We'll go further. Together now. Let me hear from you. Answer this in the comments. When your alarm goes off, what's your first instinct? A. Hit snooze and buy more time. B. Stand up immediately and claim the day. Comment below with A or B. Let's see how many of you are ready to stop negotiating with weakness and start leading your life like the 1%. Seattle is still sleeping when Rhea rises. The sky is a deep shade of indigo, and the rain taps lightly against her window like a metronome for the silence. There are no sirens, no screens, no noise, just her breath, steady and calm, and the quiet discipline she's been cultivating for months. Rhea didn't become a morning person because she liked it. She became one because she had to. Her life was falling apart a year ago. Burnout from a job she once loved, relationships strained, constant fatigue. Every morning used to begin with dread. But then she read something that cracked her open. You don't have to feel like it to do it. You just have to choose. That line stuck to her like armor. Not a motivation quote, not a productivity hack, a principle, a way of living. She didn't wake up one day fully transformed. There was no epiphany, no miracle, just a single decision made again and again. I will not wait for motivation. I will create movement. She realized that motivation is a myth dressed up as truth. It whispers, wait until you're ready, knowing you never will be. But discipline, real discipline, doesn't ask how you feel. It asks what you promised. Every morning Rhea's alarm goes off at 5:15. Not because she has to, but because she gets to. The difference is subtle, but everything. She used to negotiate with herself, bargain for 5 more minutes, debate whether her body really needed rest, or if she deserved a break. Not anymore. Now, the alarm is not a suggestion, it's a commitment, and when it rings, she rises. No conversation, no drama, just movement. Feet on the floor, spine straight, eyes open to the life she's chosen to live. There's something ancient about this act, something almost primal. It's like meeting the day before the world does, claiming it, naming it, declaring with your actions that you are not a victim of chaos but a vessel of order. The body wakes first, and with it, the mind remembers. It remembers that you've done this before, that you can do it again. That this discipline is not a punishment, but a path. Rhea doesn't check her phone. She doesn't open her email. Her first steps are sacred. She drinks a glass of water in silence. She opens the window to feel the air. She says out loud the line she writes on her mirror every night before sleep. I rise without question. And in that moment, something shifts. The fog lifts. The identity forms. She's not the tired woman from a year ago. She's someone who keeps promises to herself, and that changes everything. People often ask her what the secret is, how she stays consistent, how she finds the willpower, and the truth is painfully simple. She doesn't ask herself if she feels like it. She doesn't wait for the stars to align. She treats her wake-up time like a sacred meeting, not negotiable, not optional. Discipline, to her, is the highest form of self-respect. There's a quote from Cassius Leon that she keeps in her journal. When the body resists, remind it who you are. She reads it before bed. She reads it when she wants to quit. She reads it when she wonders if this is all worth it. And every time, it brings her back to center. The ritual isn't about proving anything to the world. It's not about aesthetics, or streaks, or external validation. It's about becoming the kind of person who trusts their own word, who doesn't break promises in the dark when no one is watching. That's what real power is. Not noise, not force. Integrity, practiced in silence. Rhea knows now that how you rise is how you live. If you wake in chaos, you carry that into your conversations, your work, your decisions. But if you rise in command, you step into the world already victorious. Not because you conquered anything outside of you, but because you conquered you. She's not perfect. Some mornings are harder than others, but the standard remains. She doesn't get up because she wants to. She gets up because she said she would. That's the real reason the 1% feel unshakable. It's not confidence, it's consistency. It's knowing that when life tests you, you've already passed your own test hours before the world even stirred. And that's what discipline gives you. Not ease, but strength. Not comfort, but clarity. Not applause, but alignment. Rhea didn't find a secret. She became the secret. Now ask yourself, what do you do when your alarm rings? Do you wait to feel ready, or do you rise without question? Jayden used to wake up already drowning. Not in water, but in noise. The kind you can't hear with your ears, but you feel in your bones. Emails blinking red, text messages stacked, notifications competing for his attention before the sun even reached his apartment in Austin. He didn't open his eyes to peace. He opened them to a war zone. And the worst part was, he thought that was normal. He wasn't lazy. He wasn't careless. In fact, Jayden was one of the most driven people in his circle. Building a startup, juggling a remote team across time zones, constantly plugged in and always on. But inside, he was cracking. Not because he didn't have time, but because he had lost something he didn't even realize was missing. Silence. It came to him not through a therapist, a coach, or a retreat, but in a moment of total exhaustion. One morning, after pulling another all-nighter and waking 225 unread messages, he did something strange. He didn't respond. He didn't reach for his phone. He just sat there, in bed, staring at the wall as light slowly filled the room. No music, no scrolling, no movement, just breath. Just presence. What he felt in that moment wasn't weakness. It was relief, as if his mind, for the first time in years, had room to breathe. Since that day, Jayden's mornings have followed a different path. He still wakes early. He still has meetings. He still leads a fast-paced life. But he starts with silence. Not out of luxury, but out of necessity. It's not about being spiritual or trendy. It's about survival. Mental, emotional, and spiritual survival in a world that trades noise for meaning at every corner. He doesn't speak for the first 15 minutes. He doesn't check his phone until his thoughts have had space to stretch. Instead, he opens a window, lets in the real world before the digital one. He sits on the edge of his bed, places both feet on the ground, and breathes. 5 seconds in. 5 seconds out. That's it. No fancy technique. Just stillness. At first it felt awkward, like he was wasting time. But then he remembered something Cassius Leon once wrote, scrawled into a letter never published. He who cannot sit with silence is unfit for his own thoughts. That line hit hard. Jayden didn't want to be one of those men afraid of his own mind. He wanted to lead others. But leadership begins with self-command, and self-command begins in quiet. He added one more habit. He asks himself a simple question, whispered like a prayer into the morning. What do I want to feel today? Not what does the calendar demand, not what does the world expect, but what energy do I choose to bring? Some days it's patience, some days clarity, some days courage. Whatever the answer, it becomes his compass. Not for productivity, but for presence. There's something profoundly grounding about silence when used with intention. It doesn't just remove distraction, it restores direction. It doesn't suppress emotion, it reveals it. In silence, Jayden found out how much resentment he was carrying, how much self-doubt he had buried beneath achievement. He discovered that stillness doesn't make you passive. It makes you powerful. And this isn't just personal development theory. It's ancient practice. The Stoics believed that silence was one of the highest disciplines, not because they feared noise, but because they knew real control doesn't shout. It listens, it observes, it waits. And in waiting, it gains strength. Jayden started calling his morning silence the meeting before the meetings, because that's exactly what it is. A meeting with the most important person in his life, himself. In that quiet, he checks in. Is he aligned? Is he grounded? Is he leading from ego or from purpose? No app can answer that. No scroll can clarify it. Only stillness can, and it changes how he enters the day. He doesn't sprint anymore. He walks. In with authority, with centeredness, with a kind of invisible armor that deflects chaos. People ask how he stays so calm during client disasters or product delays. They don't see the silence that shapes him before the noise begins. There's a certain kind of power that comes from not rushing, from not letting the world decide the tone of your day, from claiming space in a culture that wants your attention the second you open your eyes. Jayden claimed his bait, and that changed everything. He no longer wakes up drowning, he wakes up owning. Not because the world got quieter, but because he did. Naomi stood at her front door in Chicago, coffee mug in hand, watching the sky turn a soft gray before sunrise. It was quiet, but she knew it wouldn't stay that way. The chaos was coming, not from the weather, but from life itself. The students she taught would bring their emotions. The faculty meeting at 11 a.m. would test her patience. The parent email waiting in her inbox might throw her off. She didn't know the details yet, but she knew the pattern. Every day brought friction, and the only way to stay steady in the storm was to prepare before it arrived. There was a time Naomi would walk into her day, hoping things would go smoothly. She would say, "Today will be better. Today will be calm." And most days, it wasn't. Something always pushed her to the edge. A disrespectful student, a last-minute schedule change, traffic that made her late, or even just her own fatigue. It didn't take much to unravel her. What she didn't realize back then was that her peace was reactive. It depended entirely on everything outside her control, behaving perfectly, and that was a fragile way to live. Everything changed the morning. She discovered a line from the Stoic philosopher Cassius Leon that read, "The storm does not ruin the prepared, it reveals them." It stopped her. She wrote it down and read it again and again. Something about those words felt like a mirror. She had spent years building systems to organize her life, but had spent almost no time training herself to weather it. From that day forward, she changed her mornings entirely. Now, every morning before the city fully wakes up, Naomi does something that looks strange from the outside. She closes her eyes and imagines the worst. Not in a panicked way, not in fear, but in strategy. She mentally previews the entire day ahead. She pictures what could go wrong, the difficult conversation that may not go as planned, the unexpected, meeting the wave of anxiety that might rise during a busy afternoon, the harsh comment from a student, the mistake she might make, and for each one, she doesn't just anticipate it. She rehearses how she responds. How would the strongest version of me act in that moment? Would I lose my composure? Would I shut down? Or would I breathe, pause, and move through it like someone who's been there before? This practice, ancient in its origin and modern in its relevance, is known as premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of adversity. It doesn't make Naomi pessimistic. It makes her ready, and that readiness feels like freedom. She used to walk into her day as if she were stepping into the unknown with her guard down. Now, she walks in armored, not with defensiveness, but with clarity. She doesn't get shocked by difficulty anymore. She expects it. She accepts it. And because of that, she owns it. Her journal has become her battlefield map. Each morning, she answers 3 questions. What might go wrong today? What emotion could arise that I'll need to manage? How will I respond when it does? These questions don't just live on paper, they live in her. They reshape her reactions. A student lashes out, and instead of reacting emotionally, she listens. A colleague makes a passive-aggressive comment, and she doesn't bite. A long day wears on her patience, but she breathes, and she remembers. I already saw this. I already rehearsed this. I'm not surprised. I'm ready. There is a dignity in preparation that few understand. It's quiet, invisible work. No one sees Naomi in her living room as she mentally maps her emotional resilience, but they feel it in her presence, in her calm, in the way she leads without having to raise her voice. People often ask her how she stays so grounded. They think it's her personality, but it's not. It's practice. Deliberate, daily practice. The kind that takes 10 minutes, but pays dividends all day long. It's not about controlling everything that happens. It's about controlling the you that shows up when it does. Naomi doesn't hope for smooth days anymore. She builds herself to handle any kind of day. And in that strength, she's found peace far more durable than comfort. A peace rooted in choice, not chance. Not every day is easy, but she never enters one unprepared. Because when the storm comes, and it always comes, you don't need perfection. You need poise. You need presence. And above all, you need to have already seen it before it arrived. Los Angeles can be loud in the morning. Even before the sun rises fully over the hills, the city hums with motion. Cars pass, notifications buzz, the world rushes forward. But Mateo doesn't rush anymore. He used to. His mornings were once consumed by urgency. Wake up, check emails, scroll social media, feel behind. He called it getting ahead, but really, it was erosion. Quiet, consistent erosion of his clarity, his focus, his self-trust. Everything began to shift the morning he realized. He had no anchor, no inner truth to return to when the world pulled in every direction. That day, something simple happened. He looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the person staring back. Not because he had physically changed, but because he hadn't centered himself. He was living in response to the world, not in alignment with his own mind. That night, he made a small decision, one line, one truth, one sentence that would shape every morning after. I carry strength into every room I enter. He wrote it on a sticky note and placed it on his bathroom mirror. The next morning, before touching his phone, before saying a word to anyone, he stood in front of that mirror and said it out loud. Not quietly, not passively. He said it like it mattered, because it did. Something shifted. Not all at once, not dramatically, but that single act felt like a return to self, to something stable inside him, a home he didn't know he had forgotten. Mateo learned that the morning is fragile. Your mind is vulnerable, open, easily shaped, and if you don't tell it what to focus on, what matters, what you believe, the world will fill in the blanks for you. Everyone has a voice in their head. The problem is, most people don't choose who it belongs to. He decided his voice would be his own. Each morning, he now reads or recites one truth, not random affirmations, not empty hype, a statement rooted in what he values, what he wants to become, what keeps him grounded when life shakes. Sometimes, he keeps the same one for weeks. Sometimes it evolves, but it's always intentional. Words like, I don't chase peace, I create it. I'm not here to please, I'm here to live in truth. What I carry matters more than what I face. These words don't change the world around him. They change the lens through which he sees it. They act as mental armor, shielding him from distraction, reactivity, and doubt. When challenges arise, he doesn't search for confidence. He returns to his truth. When someone misjudges him, he doesn't spiral. He remembers who he told himself he was. It might sound simple, but simplicity is often the most powerful form of wisdom. Cassius Leon once wrote, "Let your first words each day be to yourself, or all day you'll echo others." Mateo lives by that now, not out of ego, but out of necessity. In a world constantly trying to define you, you have to define yourself. First out one morning, after a rough week of rejections in his art career, he stood in front of his mirror, feeling hollow. He had nothing to give, but the habit had become ingrained. He placed both hands on the sink, looked himself in the eye, and whispered, "Even if the world doubts me, I do not doubt myself." It wasn't a performance, it was a declaration. And in that moment, the weight didn't disappear, but it became bearable. Not because life got lighter, but because he got stronger. The truth you choose in the morning is not a magic spell. It won't erase obstacles, but it will keep you upright. It will keep you present. It will make sure that before the day begins, pulling at you, you've already returned home to yourself. Mateo doesn't miss a day. Not because he's obsessed with routine, but because he knows what happens when he doesn't do it. He knows the difference between leading your thoughts and being led by them. He knows what it's like to feel lost in noise and how quickly a single sentence can guide him back. Now, when people ask how he stays so grounded, so unshaken, he doesn't mention productivity hacks or meditation apps. He just says this: I tell myself the truth before the world can lie to me. And that is what it means to be anchored. Not perfect, not immune to struggle, just rooted in something deeper than the surface. Something that cannot be scrolled away or shaken loose. So the next time you wake up and feel unsteady, lost, unsure, try asking yourself, what truth do I need to hear today? And say it out loud. Say it until you believe it. Say it until it becomes part of you, because who you are in the morning is who you give to the world. Make sure it's someone you recognize. Liam never imagined the hardest part of his job wouldn't be the flames. It wouldn't be the collapsing structures or the weight of people's lives in his hands. What broke him, almost silently, was what came before all that. The moment before, stepping into the fire. The moment where his mind could spiral, question, hesitate. Not because he lacked courage, but because he had never rehearsed how to be when everything was on the line. He was a firefighter in Denver, built strong, trained well, but no amount of physical strength can replace the clarity of identity. When pressure hits, when chaos erupts, the world doesn't give you time to figure out who you are. You have to already know. It wasn't until a near miss a call that almost went tragically wrong that he realized he had trained his body, but not his presence. That night, sitting alone in his truck long after the sirens had faded, he asked himself a question that changed everything. What kind of man do I want to be when it counts? That question didn't just become a thought. It became a ritual. Every morning before his shift, Liam began to visualize, not the events, but himself inside them. He imagined how he would walk into the firehouse, how he would speak to his team, how he would hold himself when the radio buzzed and adrenaline surged. He didn't imagine perfection. He imagined composure. He imagined integrity. He imagined the best version of himself acting in alignment with who he claimed to be. This wasn't performance. This was practice. Mental, emotional, spiritual rehearsal. The Stoics called it living in accordance with nature, not just reacting to life, but showing up as the person you were meant to be, consistently, deliberately. Cassius Leon once wrote, "Do not wait for the world to remind you who you are. Rehearse it until you walk it unconsciously." Liam took that to heart. He created a simple exercise he now shares with his trainees. He calls it the mirror rehearsal. 5 minutes each morning. Stand still, close your eyes. Picture one situation you're likely to face that day, something stressful, uncertain, high pressure. Then imagine how your highest self would move through it. See the posture, hear the tone of your voice, feel the steadiness in your breath. Don't rush it, don't filter it, become it. And here's what he discovered. When you practice being that person long enough, you stop pretending. It becomes you. Not because you faked it, because you trained it. Liam noticed that he no longer reacted the same way to setbacks. Delays didn't shake him. Criticism didn't wound him. Even mistakes didn't define him, because he had already made a decision every morning about how he would carry himself. That decision acted like a compass. No matter what the day threw at him, he knew the direction to return to. People around him began to feel it too. They didn't always know what had changed, but they noticed something. A steadiness, a depth, a man who didn't just do his job well, but moved with meaning, not flashy, not loud, just solid, aligned. The world often sells us the lie that identity is something you find, as if it's hiding somewhere, waiting to be uncovered. But the truth is, identity is something you forge. through repetition, through reflection, through morning after morning of choosing to embody who you say you are. Liam didn't become excellent by accident. He became excellent by becoming intentional, not once, but daily, not dramatically, but steadily. And in that steady practice, he found something more powerful than confidence. He found consistency. Confidence can crack under pressure. Consistency holds. He often says to new recruits, "You can't control when the test comes, but you can control whether you've trained for it." And he means every word, because life doesn't schedule its challenges. They arrive unannounced, unforgiving, and when they do, the question is never whether the moment is fair. The question is whether you're ready. Every morning Liam prepares not just his gear, but his presence. He doesn't ask, "What will today demand from me?" He asks, "How will I show up, no matter what it demands?" And that's the lesson. You become who you practice, not who you talk about, not who you hope to be, but who you consistently choose to embody when no one is watching. So the next time you look in the mirror, before your day begins, don't just fix your hair or adjust your shirt. Ask yourself, if someone filmed my life today, would I be proud of how I moved through it? And then don't wait for the world to shape you. Shape yourself. Excellence isn't an accident. It's a decision, made quietly, repeated daily, and eventually lived without needing to be reminded. They weren't born different. They didn't have some secret advantage. They simply made a choice, one that almost no one else makes, and they made it over and over again, long before the world could influence them, before the noise could drown them, before excuses could wake up first. Eli in New York stopped giving his attention away the moment he opened his eyes. He stopped scrolling and started commanding. He didn't just wake up, he showed up. The version of him that used to lose hours to distraction was replaced by a man who reclaims his mornings as sacred ground. Rhea in Seattle learned to rise not by motivation, but by integrity. She no longer negotiates with her weakness. Every morning she chooses discipline, not because it's easy, but because it aligns with who she wants to become. Her early rising is no longer about productivity. It's about self-respect. Jayden in Austin rediscovered silence. He shut the door on endless stimulation and opened one into peace. In that stillness, he found clarity, not the kind sold by apps and podcasts, but the kind that comes from facing yourself with nothing to distract you. That silence became his edge. Naomi in Chicago prepared for the inevitable storms. She stopped hoping for easy days and started training for hard ones. By visualizing adversity and rehearsing her emotional responses, she became unshakable. Not cold, not distant, just ready. And in that readiness, she found real calm. Mateo in Los Angeles reclaimed his identity. He no longer wakes up searching for affirmation from the outside. Instead, he speaks truth into his own reflection before the world gets a chance to lie to him. That morning mantra isn't just words, it's a compass that keeps him aligned when everything else pulls. And Liam in Denver doesn't guess who he is. He doesn't hope to be composed when chaos strikes. He rehearses it. He visualizes the strength, the calm, the character he wants to embody, and then he walks into the world, already wearing it. Excellence, for him, isn't a reaction. It's a routine. These 6 people came from different cities, different walks of life, facing very different challenges, but they all discovered the same truth in different ways. The morning is not a gap between sleep and responsibility. It's the foundation of everything, and how you live your morning is how you live your life. They didn't just read about Stoicism, they lived it, not through lofty quotes or idealized routines, but in small, often uncomfortable choices that few are willing to make. They practiced sovereignty, silence, self-command, and identity. And in return, they got clarity, strength, and an unshakable sense of who they are. Here's a deeper lesson. If you want to build a life of purpose, direction, and internal peace, don't start with the chaos of the world. Start with the calm before the world begins. Start with your first breath, your first step, your first thought. And don't leave those moments to chance. You don't need more time. You need more ownership of the time you already have. You don't need to become someone else. You need to return to who you've always been, beneath the noise. And you don't need a perfect morning routine. You need presence, intention, a moment where you look at yourself and say, "This is who I choose to be." So here's how to apply it, starting tomorrow. Don't pick all 7 practices. Pick one. Maybe it's waking up with no snooze. Maybe it's 10 minutes of silence. Maybe it's repeating a single truth into the mirror. Whatever it is, do it with your full self. Do it without waiting to feel ready. Let that be the start of something greater than discipline, a new identity. Because the person who owns their morning doesn't just start the day stronger, they start it aligned. They don't chase peace, they carry it. And over time, that peace becomes power. Now, I want to hear from you. Which part of this story hit you the hardest? Was it the silence, the discipline, the preparation, the identity? Comment below and share your answer so others can learn from your insight too. Your perspective might be the one that wakes someone else up to who they're meant to be. And if this story meant something to you, if it sparked something you've been needing to hear, please subscribe to the channel. That small action fuels more content like this. More reminders of who we are beneath the noise. More stories that challenge us to rise, to lead, and to live on purpose. We're just getting started, and we rise together.